The Grand Tetons, America's most dramatic mountains. But 70 years ago, these peaks stood at the center of one of the fiercest conservation battles in American history. A battle that would require a billionaire's fortune, a president's defiance, and a community willing to tear itself apart. This is the story of the Grand Tetons National Park and the wilderness that almost vanished. Let's travel back to the 1800s. At this time, the American West is being shaped by raw human ambition. Settlers by the millions are pouring across the Mississippi, drawn westward by the promise of land and a fresh beginning. They arrive in masses to valleys like Jackson Hole, a growing settlement located southeast of the Grand Teton Range, with a singular purpose: to carve a living from the frontier. To these men and women, the land is opportunity, something to be cultivated, mined, and made productive. But to a small and increasingly vocal group of conservationists, this valley represents something else entirely, a natural wonder worth protecting. What followed was not a single act of preservation, but a decades-long struggle over the ownership and use of this area. The year is 1897. Colonel S.B.M. Young, the acting superintendent of Yellowstone National Park, stands at the southern boundary of his domain and looks out across the valley below. What he sees is remarkable. Massive elk herds migrating through Jackson Hole, funneling beneath the towering Teton Range as they have for millennia. These animals recognize no borders, and Young understands with a clarity ahead of his time that protecting Yellowstone alone is not enough. He proposes extending the park's boundaries southward to encompass the delicate migration routes and northern reaches of Jackson Hole. His proposals are ignored by Congress. Then, in 1916, a new forest enters the picture. The National Park Service is established, a federal bureau within the Department of the Interior with a mandate to champion the creation and stewardship of America's parks. Its first director, Stephen Mather, and his young, energetic assistant, Horace Albright, share a bold vision. The nation's most spectacular landscapes must be preserved for future generations, not as a luxury, but as a birthright. In 1917, they deliver a report to the Secretary of the Interior, Franklin Lane, declaring that adding the Tetons, Jackson Lake, and the headwaters of the Snake River to Yellowstone is one of the urgent needs facing the Park Service. Victory seems certain, and then it collapses. Idaho Senator John Nugent kills the bill in the Senate. His reason is blunt. Sheep ranchers stand to lose their grazing permits if the Park Service takes control, and Nugent is far from alone in his opposition. Idaho's sheep ranchers see the proposed park as an existential threat to their livelihood. Jackson Hole businessmen and mining companies worry that federal control will strangle their enterprises. Local cattle ranchers dread the elimination of grazing allotments that sustain their herds. Even regional Forest Service officials fear losing jurisdiction over the land that they have managed for years. In 1919, Horace Albright travels to the town of Jackson to promote his park vision. He arrives confident, optimistic, and utterly unprepared for the reception that awaits him. The townspeople are hostile. What begins as vocal opposition quickly escalates into outright fury. Albright is practically driven from the town. The animosity is visceral, personal, and unmistakable. These ranchers believe with absolute conviction that the park's expansion will destroy their way of life. The dream of protecting the Tetons appears to be dead. And then, something shifts. That same year, developers unveil proposals to dam the outlets of Jenny Lake, Emma Matilda Lake, and Two Oceans Lake. The threat of outright commercial exploitation suddenly looms larger than the federal oversight ever did. Local businessmen and ranchers are forced to reckon with the uncomfortable truth. Without some form of protection, The valley they're fighting to keep free may be destroyed by their own side's exploitation. On July 26, 1923, history converges in a small cabin along Snake River. Around the table sit some of the most influential figures in Jackson Hole. Together, they devise a radical strategy: find private funds to purchase private lands in Jackson Hole, and secretly create a recreation area that would preserve the character of the region. They need a benefactor, someone with resources and the will to act on colossal scale. Enter John D. Rockefeller Jr. Rockefeller was the only son of John D. Rockefeller Sr., the founder of Standard Oil, and at his peak, the richest man in America. The family's fortune, built on petroleum, railroads, and banking, was staggering in its scale, and it carried with it an equally enormous burden of public scrutiny. The elder Rockefeller had been vilified as a monopolist. His son had spent much of his adult life attempting to redirect that legacy toward philanthropy. When Rockefeller visited Jackson Hole in 1924 and again in 1926, he witnessed both majesty and degradation. The mountains rose pristine above the valley, luminous, immense, untouched, but the roads below were another story. Shabby roadside developments, cheap tourist traps, and commercial clutter defaced the approaches to some of the most spectacular scenery on Earth. Rockefeller was appalled, and he agreed to help. To avoid inflating land prices, he created a front company, the Snake River Land Company. Operating through intermediaries, the company began purchasing properties across the valley. Over the following years, the Snake River Land Company acquired more than 35,000 acres for approximately $1.4 million. But when news leaked, Jackson Hole exploded with fury. Accusations of coercion and illegal tactics led to Senate investigations in 1933. Both Rockefeller and the Park Service were exonerated, but trust had been shattered. In 1929, a small Grand Tetons National Park was established. Only 96,000 acres covering the mountain range and the 6 glacial lakes. The park protected the peaks, but not the valley, not the migration corridors, not the ecosystem. In Rockefeller's purchased lands, they remained in limbo, year after year, decade after decade. Congress refused to accept the donation. The land sat idle, owned by a billionaire, intended for the public, and wanted by neither. But by 1943, Rockefeller's patience had reached its limit. He wrote to President Franklin Roosevelt with a thinly veiled ultimatum: accept the land as a gift to the nation, or he would sell it to the highest commercial bidder. Roosevelt did not hesitate. On March 15, 1943, he bypassed Congress entirely. Invoking presidential authority under the Antiquities Act, he proclaimed 220,000 acres as the Jackson Hole National Monument. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Armed ranchers drove 500 head of cattle directly across the monument in open, deliberate protest. Wyoming's congressional delegation introduced legislation to abolish the monument outright. Roosevelt vetoed it. The state of Wyoming sued the federal government. The case went nowhere. For 7 years, the controversy smoldered. Supporters of the monument faced boycotts, neighbors turned on neighbors, the community was fractured along lines that would take a generation to heal. The future of the Grand Tetons hung in the balance. After World War II, perspectives began to shift. Tourism was flourishing, and the economic potential of the preservation became undeniable. In 1949, all parties convened in Washington for final negotiations. And on September 14, 1950, President Harry Truman signed the bill that merged the 1929 park with the 1943 monument, creating today's Grand Tetons National Park, 310,000 acres of protected wilderness. The Tetons have been saved, not just as scenery, but as a functioning ecosystem. Today, Grand Tetons National Park preserves some of the most intact, temperate ecosystems remaining in the U.S. However, this wilderness does not exist in isolation. To the north lies Yellowstone, a landscape shaped not by glaciers and faults alone, but by the breadth of the earth itself. In the next video, we'll travel there to explore the geological wonders and extraordinary biodiversity that make Yellowstone unlike any place on Earth.